digital television, and on Periscope. We've had revealing interviews with the leading newsmakers, and tonight we have another special guest. This is Kristine Sabillo, Chief of Reporters of INQUIRER.net, and with me is John Nery, Editor-in-Chief of INQUIRER.net.
Good evening, Tyne. Yes, we do have a special guest, and it is my happy task to introduce her. And we'll do it the INQ&A way. Three things we might not know, you might not know about our guest. First, she runs a credit card-less household. Second, she is a scuba diver. And third, and this might be surprising to many of you, she's in fact good friends with PNP Director General Bato, General Bato, because Bato was her late husband's mista at the Philippine Military Academy. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Risa Hontiveros.
Hi John, magandang gabi, Tyne, and to all the listeners, viewers of, how do you say it? INQ&A.
That's right.
Okay, magandang gabi po.
Thank you, Senator Hontiveros. So let's go straight to the topic.
Yeah.
Senator, we'd like to talk about your first privilege speech. Why did you decide to talk about drugs as a public health issue?
Well, my whole platform since the past several years was really universal health care, having worked on health bills like cheaper medicines law, reproductive health law, and then also over 2 years on the board of PhilHealth. So, nung tumindi itong war on drugs and the deaths kept piling up, you have your own kill list sa Inquirer, sabi ko, there's a broader way of looking at this na mas epektibo, mas makatao, at hindi lang mas may pagtingin sa human rights and due process, but will actually enable our law enforcement authorities to achieve their law enforcement objectives better. Ito nga yung pagtingin sa drugs problem natin through the public health lens. At pag-consider na gamitin din natin yung tinatawag na harm reduction strategies that are not just a concept, ginagamit na sila in about 90 countries around the world. Harm reduction strategies meaning yung mga pamamaraan ng pag-address sa drug problem that seek to reduce the harm, yung damage done both to the drug dependent or drug abuser, sa pamilya niya, sa komunidad niya. And amazing yung nangyayari dito sa 90 countries around the world. Thailand now, at least 2 countries in Latin America, kumbaga the continent of the cartel. Countries in Europe like the Netherlands and Portugal, best practices model yon. And certain states in the US, bumababa yung incidence of drug dependence. There's a lesser number of young people na pumapasok sa substance abuse. And this should interest also our PNP and even AFP. Dun sa mga lugar na yon, they even document less violence against the police. So, nakakamit yung law enforcement objectives and at lesser social cost sa mga tao, sa mga komunidad. At yun na nga, mas na-enable yung public health. Access din kahit na mga substance abusers, drug dependents sa health services to avoid getting sick also sa HIV AIDS, sa ibang STDs, sa Hep C, sa tuberculosis, etc.
Senator, when you say public health lens, you're taking the public health framework.
Oo.
What does that involve? What are the actions involved to just make it more concrete for the
Sure.
audience?
Public health lens, ibig sabihin, if we have this vision of a universal healthcare system, that's been drawn for us very concretely na may 6 na pillars o building blocks yan. Ang isang universal healthcare system will be built out of advances in terms of the health human resources, yung ating mga doktor, nurse, midwives, BHWs. Mas equipped ba sila to look at drug dependence, drug abuse as a medical condition na kailangan ding gamutin. Halimbawa, ng mga psychiatrists natin na specialist in addiction. Yung universal healthcare system maitatayo din through health legislation. So, policies. Halimbawa, kung sa Thailand noon, they also waged this very hard-nosed war against drugs. Nagdalawang isip sila noon. Ngayon, by policy, they are recognizing that harm reduction is an approach that better serves both health and law enforcement needs. Universal healthcare system, a public health lens by looking at the service delivery network, yung mga facilities mula barangay health stations and rural health units hanggang sa tertiary hospitals natin. Kumbaga, the facilities where we can deliver yung mga medical services even to drug abusers, drug dependents, whether preventive health or hanggang sa rehab, that side of the spectrum, rehabilitation sa mga drug abusers. And there are three others. Yung governance, so sa bansa natin, that's DOH. We're going into the budget debates now. Sinasabi ng DOH, dun sa item nila na HFEP o Health Facilities Enhancement Program, they're going to build more rehabilitation centers. Doon, ang DOH kasi nakaupo sa DDB, yung Dangerous Drugs Board. DDB is also saying na, sa aming budget, year on year, there's a special fund that's part of that, 25% dapat sa rehabilitation ng mga drug dependent. So, pwede bang pagtulungan itong dalawang department o agencies executive on the governance side? There are two others, health education. Ngayon pa lang sa Dangerous Drugs Act, meron ng provision doon on preventive education. And I don't think it's been maximized talaga. Oo. And then there's a sixth that I am, of course, health financing or insurance, yung PhilHealth. So may panukala na pwede ba daw gamitin ang PhilHealth benefit packages to cover the expenses of rehabilitation. May initial feedback ang PhilHealth na baka hindi kaya ng pera nila sa ngayon, but at least the question has been raised, we need to find money to fund kahit yung rehabilitation.
Senator, let's talk about your study tour in Bangkok. But before we do that, I'd like to ask, if I'm not mistaken, your privilege speech was the first in the Senate of the 17th Congress. And then the day after, Senator Laila De Lima also had her privilege speech also on the war on drugs. We all
human rights perspective naman.
Human rights perspective. We all know that there was pushback against her. Was there pushback against you after your privilege speech?
Nararamdaman ko rin yun. Pati sa social media. Pero, ganyan ang social media. Isa siyang democratic space. Although I really wish na mas may accountability doon. Pero syempre, that has to come from our own self-regulation. Tayo mga netizens.
So there was some criticism. How about, did you hear from the administration?
Not directly from them. At yung isang kagandahan naman, even before I had delivered my privilege speech, ay nakapag-courtesy call ako kay Health Secretary Pauline Ubial. Nagbukas kami ng magandang diskusyon na sabi ko sa kanya, Sec, posible bang meron kasi kayong 5-year strategic plan, meron kayong health agenda, can we explore na kung ano yung department priorities nyo year on year from now until year 2022, paano ko kayo masusuportahan from the legislative side? Paano ko rin kayo masusuportahan on the budget debate side? And in fact, dun sa unang araw ko sa study visit sa Thailand, sa Bangkok, andun din yung counterpart ko sa House, si House Health Committee Chair, Dan. So, nag-quick initial getting to know you din kami at sabi ko nga, baka pwede nating dalawang pagtulungan from the two houses, suportahan yung trabaho ng DOH.
What was the purpose of your trip to Thailand last week?
It was mainly to study two things. Yung universal healthcare system ng Thailand, na siya na yung pinakamalapit na modelo ng UHC system na mas sulong dito sa ating bansa kasi kumbaga siya yung best practice sa Asia sa ngayon. And pangalawa, kasi nga dumaan din sila sa matinding war on drugs nila year 2003. Grabe, very, very similar ang mga characteristics niya. At ngayon, sila naman ay pasulong dun sa public health response to the drugs problem. Harm reduction strategies din, kahit sa usapin ng rehabilitation.
So what happened in 2003? So at the time, the Prime Minister of Thailand was Thaksin Shinawatra. And he declared also a war on drugs.
Yes, he did.
What happened?
Sabi ng mga nakausap namin, mga civil society advocates, mga doktor, mga judge, very interesting mix of people na mga insider din sa Shinawatra
Government.
anti-drug campaign noon. So they really saw things up close and personal, kumaga may insider's view sila. Sabi nila, yung ginawa namin noon, parang yun din ang ginagawa nyo ngayon sa Pilipinas.
Okay.
Meron talagang declaration ng war on drugs, merong very, very short time frame na parang ipinatong ng gobyerno nila sa sarili nila. Kung tayo, sabi ni Presidente, 6 months.
3 to 6 months.
Si Shinawatra noon, sabi niya 3 months. Tapos may ganong ding very assertive demand on law enforcement authorities. Ang mga Thai police officers were required to produce a certain number of surrenderies or arrestees dun sa kanilang parang quota. Meron silang meron daw sila noong rewards and punishment system, promotions vis-a-vis kung ano man yung naging punishment nila. And then
Sounds
also,
familiar.
It sounds quite familiar. Yung pushback din nila against international criticism na sabi ni former Prime Minister Shinawatra noon nung nagpuna yung United Nations na something like, the UN is not my father. Mga ganon. Very, very allergic sa mga puna ng ibang mga bansa. And more than 2,000 deaths. Na sabi nitong mga kausap namin,
In a span of how many
that
years?
was
In about
just
3
for
months,
the
huh?
3 months. Na in the following administration, inimbestigahan nila, parang they did an assessment of the war on drugs at nalaman nila yung kalahati daw ng 2,000 napatay ay wala naman talagang kinalaman sa droga. So there was, sabi nila, there was a high, yung mga words that we use now about human rights, due process, ginamit nila in assessing na ang very high cost daw yung naging sa kanila nung kanilang war on drugs. So now they are trying a different approach na mas may pagtingin dun sa
Yung harm
health
reduction.
at saka harm reduction.
Wow.
How many months before they stopped that, what they were doing?
Sabi nila it was
The law
basically a brief period of 3 months, pero all those effects came out, and at a certain point the former administration declared a success, parang they declared an end, but the following administration had a different assessment and now is trying a different approach. Parang I think there are good lessons for us to learn from the Thai experience.
Maybe we should have more police officials go to Bangkok.
Rather than Colombia, for example. Yung
Rather than Colombia, yes, yeah.
Pumalpak ang ano nila doon ang kanilang war on drugs. Kasi solely law enforcement perspective, kailangan natin yung law enforcement for sure. Pero kung yun lang, mukhang ganun ang nagiging epekto. Pero pag yung law enforcement, ikinambal mo dun yung public health, including harm reduction, mukhang mas nagpo-produce ng better results. And documented yan in 90 countries so far around the world.
Senator, yung sa universal healthcare naman, on
Yes.
that part of the visit, what did you find in Bangkok?
Exciting ang Thai model. Siyempre, yung una kong mga tanong sa kanila were on legislation at saka yung version nila ng PhilHealth kasi yun yung mga naging karanasan ko sa trabaho dito. So yun na nga, ngayon they're moving into policy pronouncement about harm reduction talaga. And then, ang lakas-lakas ng kanilang health insurance, health financing system. Nagkabagdeklara na sila ng universal enrollment, saying that practically 100% ng Thai citizens covered ng one form of health insurance or another. Tatlong grupo yan, yung kanilang public sector, yung mga bureaucrats, ay covered ng government subsidy sa kanilang premium. Merong mga private sector workers sila who pay their own contribution, and then at a certain point sabi nila everybody else na hindi pa covered nitong public and private health insurance babayaran din ng gobyerno. So everybody is covered by health insurance at dun sa kanilang mga ospital, yung service delivery network nila, yung mga facilities, very high quality of healthcare.
Oh, yeah, world class.
World class, lalo na sa public or government hospitals nila. So, nakakatuwa.
What do you think is key? I mean, how did they get to that point?
I think yung policy commitment nung gobyerno nila at saka yung yung capacity. They had enough money and they were willing to spend it in the right way. At grabe yung buy-in ng mga mamamayan nila. Sabi nung mga Thai, when they did their last, yung third part ng health insurance nila, ang ginawa nila, in the first year, they paid for everybody's premium. Tapos, na-utilize ka agad, na-enjoy ng mga members, ng mga tao yung benepisyo. And the following year, those who were still paying their own personal contributions, yung sa private sector, tuloy-tuloy yung pagbayad. Parang everybody was willing to support. Was encouraged by these outcomes, participation, and then yung presumed na better health outcomes sa mga gumagamit ng health services nila na parang all citizens say, okay, this is a good way to spend our taxpayers' money, yung sweldo natin, yung sahod natin. So, tuloy-tuloy lang. So, sustainable siya. Parang yung pangarap din natin sa PhilHealth ngayon na patuloy siya maging sustainable in the long run.
Senator, before we continue, maybe we can just say hi. We have viewers watching us in the UAE and in Japan.
Hi, Assalamualaikum sa mga kababayan sa UAE. Gabi na ba sa Japan?
Yeah,
Konbanwa, mga kababayan.
We have a question from Neil Dalena from Facebook. Please elaborate on your idea about how to empower and strengthen barangay health workers.
Okay, salamat. Yung BHW, isa talaga silang, I think, backbone ng ating health human resources. By some accounts, about 1 million BHW sa Pilipinas. At sa maraming doctorless, unserved at underserved barangays, lalo na yung tinatawag na GIDA, yung geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas, sila talaga ang frontline health service providers. And in fact, one of my first bills that I filed, itong 17th Congress sa Senado, ay para itaas yung kanilang compensation. Sa ngayon kasi, nagdedepende lang sila sa allowance galing sa kanilang barangay. Siyempre, depende sa capacity to pay ng barangay. So, proposal ko, itaas siya sa 6,000 pesos a month at magkaroon ng mga BHWs natin ng social protection din. Sila rin dapat may automatic PhilHealth membership. Yung hospital, free hospital sa mga veteranong BHW. And pag abot nila sa legislated retirement age, pension benefits din.
Senator, I'm going to ask another question from Facebook. This is from Chris Santa Cruz. Can you tell us a solid plan on how to achieve peace and order, eliminate corruption and ASG?
Wow, laki ng tanong nyo, Chris.
Basically, if you were president,
Oh my
like
God.
something like that.
I think
legislation ako, hindi pang executive.
But I think
Pero sige.
the question actually comes with a preface.
Okay.
With all the comments you've made against the Duterte administration, can you show us your solid and concrete plan on how to achieve peace and order, eliminate corruption, and fight ASG?
Sige, isa-isa. Peace and order, naniniwala ako sa security sector reform. Saka personally invested ako sa patuloy na pag-professionalize, civilianize ng PNP kasi I was married to a PNP officer who cared about the institution also. So yung patuloy na pagsuporta sa PNP, kahit sa ganitong mga challenging situations, meron silang magandang manual of operations based sa mga UN protocols on the use of force and firearms. So, importante sa akin magpatuloy yung mga initial efforts nila, yung PNP transformation program, etc. And under the current leadership, no, yung si Chief PNP Duroy, we call him Duroy de la Rosa. Ano yung pangalawang tanong niya aside from peace and order? Kasunod sa peace and order?
Eliminate corruption.
Corruption. And then, the Abu Sayyaf group, related yan sa peace and order. Kasi hindi naman sila isang grupo na nagiging bukas sa peace talks sa gobyerno natin. So, lalo na kung sila yung mapatunayan ng investigasyon sa Davao bombing na may kagagawan sa krimeng iyan, then the full force of the law should be applied to arrest them and bring them to justice, bigyan ng hustisya yung mga namatayan at nasugatan nating kababayan sa Davao. Na habang ginagawa ayan vis-a-vis Abu Sayyaf, tuloy yung peace processes ng gobyerno sa MILF, sa National Democratic Front, yung mga ibang armadong grupo na bukas sa peace process sa gobyerno. And then yung corruption, syempre kailangan ituloy yung mga efforts of the past several years kasi anti-corruption, kasama yung transparency and accountability. So, continuous repair ng mga institusyon, lalo na, na may watchdog function sa usapin ng public funds, ombudsman, Sandigan Bayan, COA. And then, hindi lang sa gobyerno kasi dapat yung anti-corruption efforts. Tuloy yung anti-corruption efforts sa private sector and sa civil society din. So, alam mo, sa private sector, patuloy yung effort nila, yung meron silang tinatawag na integrity initiative sa iba't ibang business organizations. And sa civil society, I mean, heavily invested din ang civil society sa anti-corruption efforts. And I'm sure hindi ito bago sa administrasyon. Alam nila yung namana nila from previous administrations. They're expressing their vision of the future to us. So, I share some of those.
Speaking of the administration, how would you characterize its relationship with your fellow newbie Senator Laila de Lima?
Well, parang medyo mabigat. Hindi pa nagiging positive yung engagement sa kanya. So I'm really hoping na sa mga susunod na araw, mas magkakaroon ng kalinawan kung meron talagang ihaharap na formal na reklamo, kung merong mga ebidensya, at least ma-sort yung facts from yung rhetoric, yung atmosphere, na tingin ko ay mas fair yon, hindi lang kay Senator Laila, pero sa mga mamamayan natin na I think nabobombard din nitong atmosphere of hindi siya masyadong positive sa ngayon. I hope ma-improve pa yan.
Senator, you're a member of the Ethics Committee, am I
Yes.
right? Will you ever tackle the issue? Because I think the Senate President also mentioned that if there will be someone who will raise the issue of Senator De Lima with the Ethics Committee, how will you go about that?
Well, in fact, in-receipt na kami ng isang complaint. Nga lang hindi ako makapagsalita pa about it kasi nagpag-usapan namin sa Ethics Committee na si Committee Chair Tito Soto lamang ang authorized sa amin na magsalita about the complaint. Pero we've taken jurisdiction of it already.
How many members are you? Are there 5 of you?
No, higit pa. 4 lang kami nakadalo nung unang pulong, but I believe we're at least 9.
I see.
If I'm not mistaken.
Senator, we have another question from Facebook. It's actually very interesting. As a sociologist,
Wow. Soksay, graduate ako eh. Hindi ko alam kung nagka-qualify na ako sa sociologist.
this question is from Meli Labarejos. As a sociologist, what is the best solution in your view para maibsan ang cultural gap ng ethnic Southern Philippines, particularly Mindanao, sa highly urbanized na Northern Philippines, particularly Metro Manila?
Interesting. Okay. Well, yung buong realidad ng mga indigenous peoples dito sa atin. Siyempre, pinakamalaking komunidad yung Bangsamoro. And then, pero speaking of Northern Philippines, there's the Cordilleras. May distinct na ethno-linguistic identity sila. May distinct na kasaysayan din. May distinct din na papel sa usapin ng ancestral domain. And they too, like the Cordillerans, like the Bangsamoro, will talk about things since time immemorial. Kaya sila rin ay may interes sa usapin ng autonomy. Itong Bangsamoro, sana, I hope will still take flight sa Mindanao. From that ethno-linguistic and distinct historical starting point. But aside from them, ang dami pang mga indigenous peoples, yung mga lumad sa Mindanao and other IPs all over the country. Maraming entry points for achieving a greater integration while recognizing yung distinctiveness nila. Sabi ni Miss Melly, yung as sociologist. So, syempre, yung mga institutions natin tulad ng educational system, importanteng meeting point yan. For the Bangsamoro, paano natin i-integrate yung kanilang madrasa sa public education system natin? Ang madrasa ba pwedeng sumabay dun sa ed reforms natin tulad ng K-12 or yung pagsasaayos natin ng tertiary education? Ano yung proper na meeting point or overlap or distinct spaces din dyan? Yung idea ng Islamic banking na magpapautang ang institusyon sa mga taong nangangailangan ng walang interes. For me, that's one of the most exciting things we can learn from them sa pagtingin na ano yung economic ano yung development paradigm dapat natin? When we critique the model of globalization ngayon na neoliberal, ano yung alternative model natin or elements of alternative model? Isa ba doon yung ganyang klaseng modelo ng interest-less loans tulad sa ilalim ng madrasa? Yung family life ng mga pamilya living under Sharia, under the Muslim Civil Code. How does that give us parang discussion points between Bangsamoro families and yung mga tulad natin ng mga lowland, mainstream colonized na mga Filipino. So may mga may mga distinct differences na sana ma-appreciate, ma-enjoy, ma-celebrate natin. But there are also common
Would it
values.
help to narrow this cultural gap if the president was to spend more time in Davao? I mean,
He is a Davaoenyo.
yeah, I know, but governing from Davao, you know.
Well, siguro if I were a Mindanaon, immediately I would say, saka refreshing talaga na to shift the center of the country from just Manila dun sa ibang mga sentro, di ba? Davao, Cebu, but outside, those are all metropolis kahit naman Davao, Metro Davao yan kumbaga Imperial Davao din yan sa ibang Mindanaon, but to shift to recognize many centers. But I think since he is a Davaoenyo, pero dahil presidente siya ng buong Pilipinas, there's also something to be said for him spending time sa Manila kung nasaan yung mga national government centers. Although I really like his idea na, kunyari, sa mga, just to go back to health, sa mga tertiary hospitals, dapat hindi lahat nakasentro lang dito sa Manila. Heart, Lung, Kidney Center, National Children's Medical.
I was going to ask about that. I know it's a cultural question, narrowing this cultural gap, but is there a role that the health system can play? So that's one, I guess.
Yes. Maganda rin yun. Kasi yung mga indigenous peoples natin, hindi lang yung Bangsamoro, hindi lang yung Cordilleras, but yes, they too. And a lot of the lumad, at ito kilala ng PITAC, isang attached agency ng DOH, yung Philippine Institute for Traditional and Alternative Healthcare, something like that. Meron din tayo mga indigenous ways of healing, indigenous ways of preserving health. At marami doon ay na-preserve ng ating mga katutubong Filipino. And they are compatible in many ways sa so-called moderno Western medicine and Western ways to health. So, isa pa yon na magandang, aside from education, economics, family life, definitely yung health, isang arena na pwedeng magkaroon ng peaceful and fruitful encounter among different peoples of the Philippines.
If I'm not mistaken, Secretary Martin Andanaro has a plan to put up an all-Muslim or all-Lumad TV channel or cable channel.
Ganda.
I mean, is that something that maybe the Senate can support? Or?
Definitely. Nako, and I'm sure I wouldn't be the only one excited about such an idea. Actually, matagal na yung proposal ng public broadcasting sa Pilipinas. Si Professor Elizabeth Marcelino of UP Diliman has long developed ideas about this, and I believe taught this in her classes, na yung matagal nating PTV, NBN4 ay narrow band lang yan ng public broadcasting, yung state broadcasting. Meron talaga na yung mga komunidad mismo, community journalists, and communities as viewers, pero subscribers din, may representation sa mga board para makapag-input sa programming, to set up a public broadcasting system. Hindi lang ala NPR and PBS sa US, hindi lang ala BBC sa UK. I heard, and I want to research more, meron na daw community radio or public radio network somewhere in Indonesia. So much closer to home. So kung sinasabi ni Sec Andanar, a Muslim or a Bangsamoro network, a Cordillera network, that would be great.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the one that the Indonesians used to call the singing trees. No?
Ang ganda naman.
Hindi ko alam.
Ano sila, ants?
But speaking of UK and the BBC, we do have viewers in the United Kingdom. Maybe we can say hi.
Hi, good evening. Magandang gabi po, mga kababayan.
Now, we're gonna take a commercial break. This is INQ&A with Senator Risa Hontiveros. We'll be back shortly.
Ito Manila this September, WWE Live is heading your way with two must-see main events. It's the Powerhouse versus the Architect when Roman Reigns goes one-on-one against Seth Rollins. Plus, Chris Jericho collides with Finn Balor. Don't miss your chance to see all your favorite superstars, including the one and only John Cena, when WWE Live heads to Manila on September 9th. Tickets available. For more information, log on to WWE.com. Talent subject to change.
Tatanungin ko ang lahat ng nararapat itanong.
Tatanungin ko si Manong at Manang.
Friends,
Office mates. Si Obama.
at ang barangay tanod.
Tatanungin ko ang mga taong dapat tanungin para sa mga bagay na dapat ipaliwanag.
Para sa bansang kailangan magtanong.
Para sa kinabukasan ng ating bayan.
Risa Hontiveros. Thank you, Senator, for the very insightful discussion we've had about drugs and public health. We have another question from social media. Where is that? Oh, there. So, Mr. Jojo Ariate is asking, how can you as a senator contribute in rehabilitating the drug addicts and pushers who surrendered?
Oh, salamat Jojo. Timing na timing yung tanong nyo kasi nga magsisimula na yung or nagsisimula na yung budget debates sa Senado, and particularly babantayan ko yung budget ng DOH para siguruhin sana na yung priorities ng department ngayong taon ay mapondohan. And one of these, gaya ng nabanggit ko kanina, sa ilalim ng HFEP o Health Facilities Enhancement Program ng department ay yung pagtatayo ng mga dagdag na drug o rehabilitation centers. Swak din yon sa yung special fund ng Dangerous Drugs Board o DDB, dahil yung special fund ng DDB nakalagay doon dapat 25% nun ay para sa rehabilitation ng mga drug addicts o yung mga nag-voluntarily submit for rehab. So isa lang ito sa mga konkretong isusulong ko at hihingian ng suporta ng ibang mga senador na masigurong mapondohan ng sapat sa budget for 2017.
Senator, I'm curious about the DOH budget. I remember, I think they're calling for a higher budget. They want to follow the Cuba model as suggested by President Duterte. What exactly is the Cuba model? And you think, is it feasible for us to have that?
Well, hindi ako surprised na may ganung panawagan si Presidente, and particularly si Sec Pauline. Kasi matagal namang, kumbaga, gold standard ang Cuban public health system sa buong mundo. Imagine, for such a small country na ang tagal in-embargo, pero ang lakas ng kanilang medical education and training program. They have been able to educate many doctors from many other countries, even from the West. Tapos, dumalaw nga doon recently si Sec Pauline, and she came back, and I'm very excited to hear what her recommendations will be. Pero initially, sinabi na niya na we would need 65 billion pesos to set up a health system like the Cuban system, at saka 35,000 doctors. I'm sure naman na hindi iniisip ni Sec Pauline kaagad in one fell swoop magawa natin yan. Pero kung pagplanuhan natin, isagawa natin yan step by step over the next 6 years, diba? So every budget debate, pwedeng tignan how much of those 65 million ay pwedeng masiguro nandun sa budget ng department. Yung 35,000 doctors, edi kausapin natin yung mga human resources natin, yung mga medical students. I was in a forum recently sa CEU, and pinag-uusapan namin itong public health and harm reduction approach sa drugs problem. Nakakatuwa, may medical student na tumayo at nagtanong, kami ba na mga majoring in psych and psychiatry, some of us who will specialize in addiction, pwede ba kaming tumulong? Kaya I'm asking for a meeting soon with Sec Pauline to coordinate on the Zika virus situation naman. Isa yon sa itatanong ko sa kanya na, Sec, there are these medical students na gustong tulungan ang department. So, yun.
Um, may tanong, sorry, na tumakbo yung, actually this is fun. This is one of the first questions that we got from Francis Ancheta. What is your real purpose to be a senator?
My real purpose. Well, Francis, it is to contribute to making laws, inquiring into burning issues, passing good budgets year on year, para maitaguyod ang isang universal healthcare system. Pangarap ko sana na by 2022, kung hindi man masasabi nating may UHC system na tayo, ay we can say that on each of those 6 pillars o building blocks ng universal healthcare system, nakausad na tayo ng this much. Sana we could say by 2022 na 60% along the way na tayo sa pagtaguyod ng UHC. I'm also pala chairing the Senate Committee on Women. So yung tuloy na pagsulong ng gender sensitivity, gender justice, yung priority measure ngayon ay yung anti-discrimination bill para sa ating mga kababayang LGBT. So it's just a continuation ng buhay ko bilang aktivista na naging legislator ako ngayon.
Okay, 2 follow-up questions. First, follow-up to the your chairmanship of the Committee on Women. We have a question from Jolas Asque. Why do you keep on okay, I'm just reading the question. Why do you keep on being a feminist when women in this country are now equal to the opposite sex?
Oh, salamat Jolas kung ganyan ang pagtingin mo sa amin. But we still need to work among more women also, kami rin, and more of your kabaro. And I think I'm what I call parang a natural feminist. Lumaki po ako sa isang angkan na maiingay ang karamihan ng mga pinsan namin. Outspoken women. I was a shy little girl, pero may mood kami sa angkan na babae ka man o lalaki, maingay ka man o shy na Hontiveros, malaya ka magsalita. But I also grew up seeing na kahit may mga tulad mo na pantay ang tingin sa aming mga babae, na hindi pa rin talaga sa marami. At saka, hindi pa rin institutionalized sa ating lipunan. Meron pa rin mga discrimination against women in terms of access sa edukasyon. Women, we still earn 75 centavos sa bawat piso na tinatanggap nyo sa sweldo o sa sahod sa ekonomiya. And that's just for employees. Wala pa doon yung access sa credit kung entrepreneurs kami. Wala pa doon yung social protection sa mga babae kung nasa informal sector kami. At malawak yung hanay ng social protections, pati yung access sa maternity leave, yung mga discriminatory employment practices tulad ng last hired, first fired. Dati sa mga publica, ang daming horror stories na mga lay down or lay off, yung mga ganon. And we're not even talking about yung mga home-based na mga kabaro namin, yung mga, kunyari, mga full-time homemakers na hindi kinikwenta ang trabahong ginagawa nila sa GDP natin. Pagdating nila sa legislated retirement age, wala silang pension despite the fact that they work all their lives. Ang home-based work ang pinakamahirap na trabaho sa lahat in certain respects. And then, syempre, solo moms, may iba pang mga so I guess that's why I keep on being a feminist.
And then the second follow-up has to do with your being an activista. So we got a lot of comments actually masquerading as questions. Were you 6 years old when you were an activist now?
Ay, hindi pa. Hindi naman. Alam ko yan.
A lot of people were asking that after on Facebook. Where did that come from? I mean, what was their... Why did they ask that in the first place?
Alam mo, lately ko na lang nalaman, some friends told me, may nagbago daw sa biography ko sa Wikipedia. I was born in 1966 eh. Ginawa nilang born in 1976. Oh, thank you ha. Ginawa niyo akong 40 years old lang. Kahit golden girl na ako. So, sa totoo lang, in 1981, I was 15, sophomore high school, at naging aktivista ako noon sa issue ng Bataan Nuclear Power Plant, sa issue ng mga then US military and naval bases dito, sa issue ng nuclear energy. So, totoo po yun. Pero salamat, pinabatan niyo ako.
Senator, on criticism, since we're on that topic already,
Yes, yes.
there's another question from Facebook from Sarah Batombakal. She was
Oo.
asking, what is your response to those to people saying that you use your position in PhilHealth to get more
Oh.
coverage for the elections?
Oo. Well, no, I didn't. I think in-appoint ako ni dating President Noy sa PhilHealth dahil alam niya yung trabaho ko noon sa quality affordable meds at saka reproductive health laws. Alam niya yung advocacy ko sa universal healthcare. So, doon niya ako inilagay bilang member ng board late 2014 to late 2015. At nakapagtrabaho naman ako pati sa information campaign ng PhilHealth. At that time, 92% ang enrollment natin mga Pilipino sa PhilHealth. Pero medyo mababa ang utilization sa benefit packages. Parang 11 to 12% lang. So, yung corporate affairs office namin noon sa PhilHealth asked us, new board members, maging bahagi ng public information campaign. Lalo na nga dun sa mga GIDA areas. And nung inimbita ako na tumakbo ulit para sa Senado, nagpaalam muna ako sa then PhilHealth President CEO namin. And pumayag naman siya. So, I resigned before filing my certificate of candidacy. So, walang paggamit ng PhilHealth in the sense of the question.
Senator, just briefly, how would you respond to groups? There are still health groups who do not agree with PhilHealth or they don't want privatization of hospitals.
Yes.
So, how would you explain the issue to them, or how would you encourage them to support the government on that?
Well, yung PhilHealth, I think, was, even from several years back, nasa isang path of reforms. At I was very glad over those 2 years na maging bahagi ng ilan pang mga reforms ng PhilHealth. And feeling ko, pag itinuloy nila yan, at binantayan talaga yung tinatawag nila actuarial life nila, they will be sustainable in the long term. Ma-achieve nila yung universal enrollment, patuloy nilang mapapaganda yung benefit packages nila. They will be able to educate more hanggang all of their members paano ma-access yung mga benepisyong iyon. Yung privatization of public hospitals or yung tinatawag na corporatization, I oppose that. Tingin ko dapat i-preserve at i-recover pa nga ng gobyerno ang lost ground niya sa public health sector. Sa ngayon, 60% ng mga ospital natin ay private. We don't need further privatization. Kailangan yung public character ng mga government hospitals natin, ma-preserve yan. Kung ang layunin ng so-called corporatization ay ma-professionalize yung management ng mga ospital, there are other ways to do that while retaining the public character. Gobyerno pa rin may-ari niyan, gobyerno pa rin magpatakbo. Kung gusto ng hospital board, edi mag-headhunt sila, mag-hire sila ng professional manager from the private sector. Or kung maganda ang relasyon nila sa anong tawag doon, yung what's that, yung may local special body sa LGU na parang oh my goodness, I'm senior momenting here. merong ganong education body, meron ding health body sa LGU. Edi i-maximize ng ospital yung relasyon nila dun sa local special body na yon na health focused sa LGU. Importanteng manatiling public ang government hospitals para yung karamihan ng mga mamamayan na mahihirap pa ay may access sa abot kaya at dekalidad na health services. Now, we continue to work on the quality of care, but the solution is not to privatize.
Senator, we have a lot of viewers in Davao. You want to say hi?
Maayong gabi mga kauban, and again, condolences dun sa mga namatayan at mga nasugatan. I'd like to echo the words of Davao Mayor Inday Sara Duterte that yes, you will stand up now. So, lahat po kaming mga kababayan nyo outside Davao, nakikiisa po sa inyo.
We have a question from Selena Layson on Facebook. Besides health, what are your other priorities?
Okay, well, salamat sa tanong na yan. Gaya ng nabanggit ko, sinusulong ko rin po yung anti-discrimination bill para sa ating mga kababayang LGBT. Ito naman po sa ilalim ng Senate Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality. So beyond health at saka yung women and gender, yung buong range ng social protections. So yung pagsasaayos po ng mga pension systems natin, pagsasaayos din ng PhilHealth, so yung health insurance o health financing aspect ng universal healthcare, yung security of tenure para sa ating mga empleyado at manggagawa, yung patuloy na pagsasaayos ng mga batas sa ating mga informal settlers, lalo na yung mga urban poor na mga kababayan natin, lahat siguro climate change, adaptation and mitigation, lalo na kasama ng mga basic sectors. Siyempre yung dalawang pinaka-vulnerable dyan, yung mga mangingisda at indigenous peoples din.
Senator, speaking of the divorce
Yes.
law, the prospects of a divorce law, what's the dynamics like in the Senate? Do you think there's a chance in the Senate?
Wala pang active na nagsisimula dyan. May mga informal conversations lang, parang nagpapakiramdaman, nagpupulsuhan, exploratory na ano kaya kung tulad daw kasi sa House, merong silang divorce bill doon, dito rin ba sa Senate, pero wala pang aktual na nagsisimulang mag-draft. Pero ako, I feel at the very least, we should start the conversations about the issue of divorce. Alam natin na maraming kababayan, lalo na mga babae, ay trapped in abusive marriages. And they want out. They want to have another chance at life and happiness, love, and family life. So, pakinggan natin yung boses ng mga tao sa isang public conversation about divorce.
What about the prospects in the Senate of an abortion law?
Walang nagsasalita tungkol dyan. Klarong, I think the state of the policy, the legislation on that is abortion remains a crime under the revised penal code. Ang importante para sa mga babae in terms of our reproductive health is yung full implementation ng reproductive health law. Na yon talks about family planning, talks about yung age-appropriate reproductive and sexuality education ng mga kabataan, talks about yung pagsuporta sa mga couples to achieve a decent quality of life through family planning.
One last question about Senate dynamics. Can you give us an idea of what exactly the Senate is doing? It's not just hearings on extrajudicial killings, right? I mean, there's so much else that's going on. I mean, so
dami-dami mga komite na nag-convene na, nag-organizational meeting. Aktual na nagtatakal na ng mga bills na naka-refer sa amin. So, anti-hospital deposit law amendments sa Committee on Health. So, gusto naming dagdagan ng parusa yung mga magtataboy ng indigent emergency patients dahil dinidemandahan sila ng deposit. Gusto naming bigyan ng tax incentives yung mga private hospitals na magko-comply naman. Yung anti-discrimination bill sa Committee on Women. Yung isang committee naman on informal settlers, housing and urban development, dumidinig na rin ng mga bills tungkol sa socialized housing programs, mga on-site in-city relocation, at ngayon lalo na nagsisimula na yung budget debates, dodoble na siguro ang bilang ng mga committee hearings kasi sinisimulan na rin naming dinigin yung mga proposed budget, una yung macro, pero nagsisimula na yung mga individual na departments. Today, yung Dangerous Drugs Board, yung Pasig River Rehabilitation Commission, bukas yung Office of the Vice President at mga housing agency. So, ang dami-daming trabaho na rin and probably ganun na rin sa House.
Senator, now that you're in the Senate,
Mm-mm.
how different is it when you were in the HOR?
Interesting yan. I used to say when I was working in the House na if ever makapagtrabaho ako sa Senado, baka hindi siya kasing interesting ng House. Simply kasi mas maraming tao sa House. So like in any ecosystem, mas marami kang permutations na
Power
pwedeng
players.
buuin o yung mga different plays, including the power play. And Senate mas maliit. So ngayon ang pakiramdam ko na nagtatrabaho ko sa Senate, ano siya, parang slightly familiar, pero slightly iba rin. Or in many ways din, iba. I'm just really glad to be back to legislative work. Enjoy ko siya talaga. And, well, these are interesting times. So, yeah.
Senator, we have a little game, but it's not yet time for that. Now we'll ask you 10 questions with
Okay.
hopefully 10 quick answers. But let's talk about the hearings. Or rather, let's talk about what's not covered by the hearings. Is there something important happening in the Senate that we are missing out on because we're focused on the budget hearings and then the extrajudicial killings and so on? Anything major that is not appearing on the radar screens of news organizations?
I think the main business of the Senate, yun yung nakikita nyo, yung pagdinig, even about the burning issues. The Senate has not been shy or afraid to tackle those. At ito nga, sa budget na actually isa sa pinaka-importanteng batas year on year that we are supposed to produce. Medyo what you see is what you get naman sa Senate, I think.
What else?
Ano ba yung tinutukoy mo?
No, it's a genuine question. I mean, we want to know if there's
Yeah.
if we're missing things because we might be focused too much on some of the more spectacular stuff. But I have a question.
Spectacular stuff is really talagang concerned kami sa
Yeah.
mga yon, and we talk about them even during suspensions of session on the floor.
So speaking of that, for instance, from the public health perspective, is there in fact a drug crisis?
That is for me, a very important question. Kasi, tingin ko, problema yung drug abuse, problema yung illegal drugs. But, I think, the most important, yung pinakamalalim pa ring problema, ay kahirapan pa rin. And borne out din naman yun kahit sa mga surveys before and after election day. Sa kahirapan din naman nakaugat din ang problema natin sa droga. Kahirapan din yung isang entry point natin para tugunan at resolbahin yung problema natin sa droga. Medyo yata na switch yung position ng mga issues sa isa't isa. I think poverty, inequality, yun pa rin ang pinaka matinding problema.
In terms of
para sa
number,
atin.
I mean, I think
Isa pa yun.
DDB has an
Oo.
estimate of what, 1.2, 1.6 million. But the president is talking about a PIDEA number that's 3 million, and now
Yun na nga
by his own
eh.
estimate it's 3.7.
Oo.
Is there a solid number or estimate we
In
can
fact, dun sa mga
Point
materials that I've been studying for these budget debates,
Mhm.
earlier 2016, ang DDB percentage was 32% ng ating mga barangay
Okay.
drugs affected.
Okay.
Bad enough, di ba?
Yeah,
For
sure,
one-third.
yeah. Mhm.
Pero para sabihin na mas malaki pa dyan, and in absolute numbers, mas malaki, I think kailangan, even in terms of resolving the problem, kailangan i-validate natin yan scientifically. At saka, one drug dependent is not the same as another drug dependent. Sana matanong natin yung ating mga doktor, lalo na yung mga psychiatrists, lalo na yung mga nagsispecialize sa addiction. Kasi kinaklasify pala nila yung mga drug dependents from beginning, I don't have the exact
Terms.
scientific terms, pero meron silang yung nagsisimula pa lang, or occasional, or sumiseryoso na ang addiction, yung pinakamatindi, and for each may iba't ibang protocols pala ang rehabilitation nila. At sabi pa nung iba, from country to country, on average, only 1 out of 10 drug abusers ay potentially magiging problema sa sarili niya or sa ibang tao. Yung magkukumit ng krimen, violent na krimen. So, sa ganong sitwasyon, kung tama din yun sa ating sitwasyon sa Pilipinas, ibig sabihin, yung hard law enforcement response would probably be called upon sa 10% ng mga sitwasyon. Pero baka mas may balanse or mas mabigat pang ang timbang dun sa medical approach, dun sa public health and harm reduction.
So it's possible that we can have a better overview of the problem through the budget hearings.
Actually, yes. Yun
They
yung
would
isang
have to
kagandahan
defend,
din sa budget hearings.
the
proposal.
items,
Oo.
their proposals.
And
yes.
hopefully be open sa mga mungkahi ng mga legislators, how policy-wise, how might these monies be better spent within that set amount na. Kasi hindi naman pwede, di ba? Hindi naman pwedeng dagdagan yan.
Okay, it's time for our game. We have 4 minutes left, but I think that's enough. So the title of our game is The Good, the Bad, and the Maybe.
Okay.
I'm basically
Hindi the
just
bad
going
and the
to
ugly.
give you an idea or an issue, and you will reply if you think it's a good idea or if it's a bad idea. You can also say maybe, but only once. So
Out
it's
of
like
the-
your
out of
safe
the 10
passage,
questions.
Yeah. Out of the 10, you can only use maybe once.
Okay.
So let's begin.
Sige.
So the first is Duterte rhetoric against Obama.
Sorry, bad.
Bad idea. All-out war against Abu Sayyaf.
Good, basta under international humanitarian law.
Left in government.
Good. Basta seryoso sa governance.
Philippine CPP peace talks.
Good.
Self-described socialist as president.
Good kung totoo.
Cayetano joining the presidential delegation to the ASEAN summit.
Good. Legislator siya.
Mayor Sara Duterte's move to fire Davao City police chief.
Very good. I
After
salute my
the-
kabaro. Yeah.
After the Davao
explosion.
bombing.
I'm sorry, I don't know the Davao police chief from Adam, but I really admire Mayor Inday Sara's moves.
Cayetano's plan for political ceasefire while the president is away.
Good.
Philippines hosting Miss Universe.
Good, I guess. Teka, may maybe pa ba ako?
Yes, we still have one.
Ako nga, no?
With
but you don't
with
need to
Shia words
say
back
maybe.
as the host.
You don't need to use it,
Wow.
actually.
Oo nga. I should have said maybe siguro for something earlier, but oh well.
The last one is reviving the Bataan nuclear power plant.
Bad. Alam ko na, yung maybe ko would be yung extreme left in government.
Extreme
Oo,
left.
kasi
So what do you mean by
maybe
extreme
kung seryoso sa governance,
That's
na
what he said.
it is a strategic commitment for them na kasi historically ang strategic sa kanila yung armed struggle. I mean even ideologically. Pero kung sasabihin nila strategically governance, yun, so that's the maybe.
Is there any
Yeah, you would want to explain
yeah.
further. We still have 2 minutes.
Wala naman yata. Meron ba? Wala naman yata.
so it is true that the Senate by definition has a role to play in foreign affairs.
Yes.
So you welcome senators
treaties.
going
Definitely.
on these trips. I mean they get a better appreciation of the
Yes.
How about-
regional politics.
How about
Yes, and
President
global
Duterte's
politics. Oo.
recent performance, or at least recent comments pertaining to other foreign leaders? What can you say about that?
Can be improved. Pero he has time.
Yes. He
Oo.
has 6 years.
Oo, 6 years.
So on the issue of nuclear energy, at least the BNPP
Ay,
no.
nako. Alam mo,
Are you open to nuclear,
not at all. Alam nyo,
even if not BNPP?
no. Yan ang issue kung ba't ako naging aktivista. Oo, kaya at saka, even the most passionate and knowledgeable nuclear energy advocates dito sa Pilipinas, hindi nila masagot yung isa sa maraming issue laban sa nuclear energy, yung usapin ng storage at disposal ng waste. Kasi, libo-libong taon ang half-life at ang deterioration ng mga nuclear waste na yan. Paano natin gagawin yan ng ligtas? Paano natin gagastusan yan? And at the time na the alternative of renewable energies bilang bahagi ng ating energy mix ay mas doable, bakit pa, di ba? Medyo, it really wouldn't make sense.
I think on that nuclear note, we will have to end. We will have to end. We're out of time. Thank you very much, Senator Risa
Salamat,
Hontiveros.
marami, John.
for making time for this. Thank you also to can you please say hi to our our viewers in Spain?
Oh, buenas noches, mga kababayan.
Thank you to those watching from Spain, the UK, UAE, Japan, also from the Republic of Davao.
Yes, lagi.
And the many others following us on the different Inquire platforms. Tayo magpapaalam na, tayo.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Thank you,
Salamat.
thank you to everyone listening right now. Who's next on the hot seat? Find out by following INQUIRER.net on Facebook and on Twitter, as well as Nery_newsstand and Sabillo INQ on Twitter. This has been INQ&A with Senator Risa Hontiveros. Thank you and good night.